Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, it is Tuesday going into week 5 college football season. Rob Browne here with you on Sidelines. Great show in store today because we're going to start with the Sultan of the Sun Belt on the Gulf Coast, man who eats the best food in the world, Q's Nation. Hey, I love it the way people in a lot of parts of the country call Syracuse by name. They will say, listen, I was looking at the television the other night and I was watching Syracuse. Dave Schultz, he talks about him a lot. But David Schultz, WNSP, 105 FM, America's first all-sports FM radio station, will join us here in the first segment. Segment number 2, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline in Oxford, Mississippi. He's moving around, going somewhere. We'll talk Ole Miss Rebels. They get ready for the big matchup with Kentucky. And that's an under-the-radar game, I think, by the national media. But, man, that's going to be a big game. I hope they don't miss this one. Arkansas, Alabama. There's a lot of big ones this weekend. Texas A&M goes to Mississippi State. Top of the second hour, we're going to be joined by VERN LUNDQUIST, longtime voice of CBS College Football. Still does the Masters. Man, this guy has a resume that, you know what? You got to take a coffee break to get through it. I mean, it's impressive. And lives out in Colorado. Just got back from a nice cruise. Looking forward to having VERN LUNDQUIST on here, an icon. We all grew up watching him on CBS. But hey, do us a favor. Give us a follow on Twitter at @sidelines_live. And remember, you can hear us after the show, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. Also, sidelines.live, all those other places, Android, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, whatever. But we're going to get started right now talking college football with David Schultz. And what's the takeaway from this past weekend's games with a look ahead later on to the coming week? Because there's a lot happening, and it happens quickly.
The Vols screwed me. The Vols should have covered. That's the takeaway. I had that game covered, not once, but twice. Billy Napier helping me out by going for 2.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why he's going for 2, and he probably should have kicked it if he wants to go for 2 the second time. Okay. But that's the takeaway. I lost money because the Vols screwed me. That's the takeaway.
Well, Billy Napier reminded me a lot of watching studio wrestling, with someone that they're having to hold him back on the sidelines.
Yeah, what was that about? I missed that part. What was that, a call or?
Yeah, it was. It was a call that I remember. I think they said it was a first down. It was a catch. Maybe he didn't think it was a catch or a first down. And I watched so many games. I had curvature of the spine Saturday. Man, I was watching a lot of football, but I believe it was. But man, Billy Napier, he had about 15, 20 relatives in the stands. You watched him, and you remember him out at ULL. This guy, he may appear to be calm, but man, he is a passionate coach, and I think his players love fighting for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not sure. Got into an argument with the Gator fans yesterday about the analytics about going for 2 when he did, but he'll get it right. I don't think that game was nearly as close as the score, right? I kind of dictate that by, did Florida have a chance to tie or take the lead in the second half? And I don't think they did. They were down by 2 scores the entire second half. Tennessee's really good. You can see Florida is pretty good, right? They fought, right? They got back in the ball game. They made a stop when they had to. And I really thought Napier was actually going to kick a field goal without a minute left to go and then try a touchdown because, to get an onside kick and then one play is going to be tough. And then you got to say, well, then you got to go all the way down for the touchdown. But I thought he was going to do it the other way. I think Arkansas, I've overrated Arkansas. I've kind of been week to week on them. I think my first impression with Arkansas was right. I think they're good. I think they're top 25. I don't think they're top 10, which is pretty good for Arkansas. And I think when it came down to it, when I actually won money when they beat Cincinnati because it was a 7-point game and they had KJ Jefferson. I don't know if you remember that game. That was a great end of the game drive, right? About 6.5, 7 minutes. And he just kept on getting first downs. And I thought that was great. They didn't kick the ball. They didn't score. They just did a good job of hanging on to the ball when Cincinnati needed it back. And I just thought, I don't know about the defense, and I know Catalan's hurt.
Yeah.
I just thought they're good. They're not great. Everybody is looking for who's going to challenge Alabama. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Georgia, whether it's LSU. They just, the media, the fans, they want somebody who's going to challenge Alabama. And I don't think it's Arkansas yet. Now, here's the thing about Alabama. We're not sure about them yet either. Okay. To be honest with you, because, they've hammered Vanderbilt, who's improved. They hammered Utah State and they hammered ULM. When they went on the road to play Texas, they eked out a victory. Are they playing better? Maybe. We're not really sure yet. And so they're going on the road again. I don't think Arkansas is all that good in terms of, being top 10. I think they're a good football team. Alabama may not be as good as we think they are. So maybe this game is a little bit closer than that double-digit spread, which I think opened up at 19 and then is now like 13 or 14. I would still be surprised if Arkansas wins this football game. I think Alabama still goes in there and rolls, but it is probably right where that line is 10 to 14 points.
Yeah, and the one thing about that Arkansas A&M series, a lot of weird things happen when those two teams play, very similar to Auburn LSU. But when you are Arkansas and you're going in to score from the 3-yard line, KJ Jefferson holding that ball out, and the way A&M ran it back, handing off, like the hook and ladder, that was so bizarre. But I think Arkansas.
I thought, I'll be honest with you, Rob. I thought his forward progress had been stopped. Why didn't the whistle blow?
Yeah.
Because if another player comes in and hammers him while he's standing there, he gets a personal foul for unnecessary roughness. I know he wasn't down to the ground, but his forward progress had absolutely stopped. He was either stopped or going backwards. And the whistle really should have blown. And I thought A&M, again, I maybe had money on Arkansas. But yes, you're right. The fumble, was the fumble at like 14-0? The fumble would have made it it would have been a huge play. And it turns out it was a huge play period for A&M. And so, again, A&M is probably, top 25, not top 10. They've certainly rebounded nicely from what was an ugly loss to App State, right? They easily could have lost both games, although Miami stinks. We found that out. I called that one after they lost to A&M. I'll give you an example, Rob, the difference. Last week, I think I mentioned this last week, that Kane Womack was really angry that South Alabama lost to UCLA, not only because he may have screwed up the fake field goal attempt, but they fumbled some plays and they didn't get off the field on like a 4th and 4 from the 8-yard line, and it ended up being a touchdown, and he was upset. Now, they lost games last year, but he's upset this year. And they came out and they hammered Louisiana Tech. And they didn't even play that well, to be honest with you, but they still hammered them. Miami takes a loss. Miami takes a loss to A&M and then gets embarrassed at home by Middle Tennessee State. They got boat raced by Middle Tennessee State. What is that? What is going on there in Miami?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. That's why we shouldn't have rankings till about the 5th week of the season. And why wouldn't, if we had rankings, if we didn't have rankings, that game wouldn't be considered an upset. And it's the fact that Miami has a tradition from 83 to 01, 5 national championships and 4 or 5 runner-up games. That was an incredible run that Miami had at that time. Yeah. But you've got with the portal now, and Jimmy and I, we talk about this with people every day, but there's guys that are just dropping off of rosters and you lose track of them and they reappear somewhere. Look at this past weekend's game. Like Michigan Rutgers. Look at Kansas State beats Oklahoma. Kansas State may be a pretty good team. Kansas is at 4-0. There's good football played everywhere. And before we go to Jimmy, I got to say, Friday night it was fun. We were over at the Cherry Farm and at the hunting camp at the house watching Syracuse and Virginia. Don't tell me people around the country aren't as passionate as anybody else. Syracuse in particular. Now that maybe it's because they have air conditioning now in the Carrier Dome, right, which was always the great irony. Willis Carrier, the man that invented air conditioning, and that Carrier Dome just recently purchased AC. But man, Q's Nation, as you call them, 4-0, and I don't know how good they are, but 4-0, better than being 3-0.
Right. I was actually calling a high school football game, a pretty good one that was a shutout during the first half and completely turned around in the second half for the home team. And yet I was still distracted as Syracuse was doing their best to blow. What should have been a 27, at least 27-0 lead at half at 16-0. Garrett Schrader actually looks like he's reverted back to form. Sean Tucker has had a disappointing start to the season, and somehow they still pulled it out. I mean, in this case, an unfortunate face mask instead of intentional, right? Garrett Schrader was going past one of the defensive linemen. He just stuck his paw out, and instead of getting the top of the helmet, he got the face mask. That gave Syracuse a first down. They go down and kick a field goal and come away with a win. They get Wagner this weekend, so that should be a win. And then I think there's an off week, and then NC State's coming to town. And NC State, depending on what happens this weekend with Clemson, could be undefeated. And so I'm sure Syracuse is not going to get any top 25 votes over the next couple of weeks, but that could still be a top 10 team coming into Syracuse. And it'd be nice if they could draw over 40,000 for that. I don't know if game day is going to be there. There's a bunch of other ball games that weekend that game day would be at. But yeah, Syracuse is 4-0. They very easily, I don't know if they can beat NC State at home. If they play like they did the first 2 weeks, they can beat NC State. And then maybe they'll be undefeated taking on Clemson the week after NC State. So it's certainly a fun ride. Someone may have Syracuse over 4.5, and so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, and we touched on it yesterday, the post-mortem autopsy, the Auburn, Missouri game. Jim Cantori was at Jordan-Hare last Saturday morning. I think now he is literally prayers are with the people down in Florida, for God's sakes, in the Gulf Coast, because that is, I don't know if y'all are, I'm sure you're on Hurricane Watch, what have you, there in Mobile. I'm old enough as a kid. I was a little guy when Camille hit, and my mother said, I'm not letting some thunderstorm ruin my vacation. Bob, make me another drink. I'll never forget that one. I stayed through Camille, and once the waves started going over 98, literally going over 98, and Destin, my dad, said, I'm leaving. If you want to come with your boy and me, you can come. My sisters had already left, but they got a lot going on. But back to football, that is the Auburn situation. They need to get a hire in there at athletic director, and they need to make the right hire. Now you're going to have competition for the best ADs out there. Georgia Tech cleaned house yesterday. Jimmy brought it up, because I was saying, look, nothing personal against Jeff Collins, but Georgia Tech has a lot of money, but they're sitting on it, and their fans are frustrated. They cleaned house, got rid of the AD and the coach yesterday. Auburn needs to get a new AD in there soon and hire. If they're going to make a change, you better get this one right. But what a wild world we live in, Dave Schultz.
Well, I mean, with all due respect to Georgia Tech, those are two very different hires, right? I mean, Georgia Tech, is anyone really trying to compete for a national championship there? Aren't they just trying to get 8 or 9 wins? Aren't they kind of like the Ole Miss and the Mississippi States of the ACC, right? Plus, they're in the other division. They're not even in the hard division. And so, once in a while, win 10, 11 games, maybe make a run. But all they need to do is win 7, 8 ball games. So it would technically be an easier job than Auburn, because now you're going to the fire. Because now you are literally competing not only with Alabama, but you're also competing with Georgia. That is not an easy job. All right. And, good luck to that. I always forget that Auburn doesn't have an AD. So, when and if Brian Harsin, everybody thinks Brian Harsin is getting fired. All right. I am resigned to the fact that he's getting fired. I don't think he necessarily should get fired. But if you're going to be in this spinning wheel this whole time, you might as well make a change. But you better. Here's the thing: as people have pointed out to me, they've already reached out to people. They need to make sure they do get the right one. You got to get somebody who understands it. And I don't get the whole. I can do my things. So the thing that upsets me, Rob, because I've been, fish out of water in Lafayette and Mobile, is, well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, you brought me in to kind of change it. At the same time, you can't reinvent the wheel. Okay. Yeah. So I talked about this on my show yesterday. If Brian Harsin is going to complain that he couldn't go to schools and get to know the coaches, well, you know what? Everyone had figured out by that time, December of 20, I don't have to go into work. I don't have to go to the office. He should have been on Zoom calls 50 a day talking to these high school coaches. So after all those allegations turned out to be false, last February, and then you get a report a month later. He hasn't visited Thompson High School. He hasn't made a connection to Thompson High School. How is that feasible? Did you know, Rob? I saw this. I don't know if it's selective stats or whatever, but Jim Nagy put it out. Do you know what city in America has the most per capita guys in the NFL?
Probably Mobile, Alabama.
Mobile, Alabama. Do you know who's
Damn
not
right.
recruiting down here in Mobile, Alabama? Auburn.
Yeah. Well, and look, I know we're going to go to a break here in a minute. I know Jimmy's got some questions when we come back about that, because that is the problem. Last year in January, when coaches could get back out on the road, that first week, I understand Kirby Smart and Nick Saban both hit 35 to 40 or more schools, and Harsin hit, I don't know, 7 or 8. I'm going to tell you right now, if you look at the state of Alabama, high school recruiting this year, 22 4-stars, 7 5-stars, and Auburn is in on 2 of the top 10, the 2 kids at Carver that are both 5-stars, and then they've got the 15th and the 23rd ranked players in the state. You've got out-of-state schools beating you in your own state in a generationally incredible year for recruiting. There's no – you cannot justify this. This is like forgetting to bring shells in the blind when you're duck hunting. How can you screw that up? But they've done it, and I'm telling you right now, just looking at it from my view, knowing what I know, and I don't know everything, but you're not going to out-scheme Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and don't discount these Mississippi schools. Listen, Ole Miss just is about to complete a $2 billion fundraising campaign, $1.5 billion for academics, $500 million for athletics. They have got money. The Ole Miss people are really getting after it. Not to say State's not, but I'm telling you, Ole Miss is serious. If you think that if you're Auburn, you're just going to get a new coach in here and everything's going to automatically get better, you're crazy. Ain't nothing free anymore. Everybody's got money. We're going to talk about it more. Rob Browne, Jimmy Hodge with David Schultz after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you on this Tuesday. Sidelines. David Schultz, WNSP down in Mobile. And David, you are making so many great points. I know Jimmy Hodge up at Lake Zurich jumping here. We got some questions on this rapid fire football blitz Tuesday.
Yeah, well, David, first of all, I couldn't help but laugh last night. I was flipping the channel. I was actually watching the Cowboys-Giants game, and during halftime, I was watching Thinking Out Loud when I switched to the SEC network. And I've talked about for years the Jordan Hare voodoo, and Reese Davis was on last night. You know, Reese is always really guarded, about talking about bizarre games, controversial games, and so forth. And I said, I guess I'm not by myself, but he actually said on the show that Jordan Hare's only stadium in the world where that game could have ended the way it did on Saturday. There's just no other location where you have as many crazy endings to games over the years. I mean, we're talking, just the Iron Bowl, the Curtis Brown touchdown that was at 95 before replay at the end, and, the Earl System fumble on the screen pass with a minute left at 97, and so on and so on. But it was just I just couldn't believe that I heard it, from Reese Davis. But golly, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, you got to be looking for the nearest mental institution when you got back to Columbia. I mean, it was just virtually impossible for them to lose that game, and they figured out a way to do it.
Multiple ways they figured out. Hold on a second. Missouri jumped offside again on another field goal attempt.
Well, yeah. And, Dave, what was so weird about it was what led to that final sequence that culminated with the 26-yard field goal miss was the fact that Auburn had a 4th and 1, maybe at the 28 or 29. They're in field goal range. I know Carlson had missed a couple, but usually he makes those. But Auburn should have lined up for the field goal anyway, because you can bet that Missouri would have had one or two guys that would have jumped offside.
That's right.
They would have got the first down anyway.
That's right.
How do you have, on the last play of the first half, 2 Missouri players that jump off sides?
Yeah. Then they do it again. They did it again.
Then on the next play, Carlson misses again. I've never seen him miss 2 in a row in a situation like that where he got a mulligan. And then in overtime, it looks like Missouri had intercepted the pass on the first play of overtime, and it turns out the very tip of the ball did touch the ground, so they get another mulligan there. And on the field goal, how does a nose tackle lined up 6 inches from the ball jump off sides on a field goal attempt? It's just absolutely impossible. And then again, the Missouri strategy after making that circus catch at the 3-yard line just to kind of run it in the middle of the field. I mean, in college football, you just can't put it on your kicker. I don't care how successful he's been over time unless you absolutely have to do it. And what I meant with 1st and goal at the 3, you have to just run 2 or 3 plunges up the middle just to see if you might score a touchdown. And then if you still haven't, or maybe one quarterback draw.
For recording your message. If you are satisfied with your message, press 1.
Well, I'll tell you right now, when David, when you look at what is going on in college football, having to take kickers and put them in that situation, special teams should be about 1/3 of every game. And that's just the way it is. And I saw a lot of look at Arkansas's kicker, had a short field goal by his standards, and it just didn't work. And that was frustrating.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I'm 95%. I'm not blaming the kicker. Now, it's tough not to blame the Missouri kicker. But 95% of the time, I'm not blaming the kicker, right? You don't fumble at the goal line if you're Arkansas. There are, probably 20 plays before we get to a kicker that you need to, address. But it's tough to let a guy who misses a 26-yard field goal off the hook, or however long even the Arkansas kicker. I mean, did they really lose that game because they're playing in an NFL stadium compared to a college stadium? Would that have been on the inside of the goalpost? So that's nuts as well. So, but, usually I am anti blame the kicker mode because, if you want to win the ball game, score more touchdowns.
Yeah.
Basically. Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Rob. I got this message saying if I'm not happy with my message.
Yeah. I don't know what happened there.
But Dave, the thing about it is that at the very worst, you run 2 quick hitters up the middle from the 3-yard line. See if you can get some push, up front, and then maybe on 3rd down, run a quarterback draw, something like that. But you got to try to score the touchdown for 2 or 3 reasons. First of all, they can't get a fluke play like if they kick off out of bounds, you get it at the 40-yard line and 2 completions, you're in field goal range. By scoring 7, if you can do it, you really put them in a bind. But then you kick the field goal if you absolutely have to. It was bizarre. But finally, though, after Auburn gets the mulligan in overtime to hit the second try at the field goal, the running back is about to score a touchdown. He's at the 3 or 4 yard line. For once, a Division I football player is holding the ball in the correct arm, his outside arm, to keep the ball as far away from the defender as possible. and you allow with your inside arm to be able to stiff arm or push a defender away or deliver a forearm shot, whatever. So now he's about to reach the goal line, and for some reason he decides he's going to switch it to his inside hand. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I mean, he didn't even have to reach the ball over. It looked like he could have gone in standing up. These things don't happen normally this many times in a single game, and in just a condensed period of time. It's bizarre. But anyway, let's just put it this way. Auburn's a tough place to win. You know, it's just something about it. But anyway, you just go on to the next game. But this is college football. It's crazy. And then you're talking about Arkansas. Arkansas was up 14-7 when the Jefferson play happened. Right. Now, if you're an Arkansas fan, you have to be absolutely despondent because you jump up 14-0 on an average A&M team that is not exactly explosive offensively. So they cut it to 14-7. Now you're at the 4-yard line. What makes KJ Jefferson think that he can try to jump over the line of scrimmage
Dave,
from the 4-yard line and score a touchdown?
Yeah.
And the ball gets knocked out?
Yeah. Dave, what's he thinking? I mean,
he's just trying to reach. You know, all these guys think they're Superman. Feel sorry for the kid, right? Feel sorry for my wallet. You know, I mean, they're just trying their best, right? The kid, you know, it's one thing when these, receivers are scoring a wide open touchdown and, drop the ball and celebrate too soon before they cross the goal line, which is idiotic. These guys are just trying to score, right? And Arkansas would have been in control of the ball game. And that one play totally turns the entire game around. We'll see if it turns the entire season around. Guys, last week, I went into the idea that if Arkansas blows out A&M, which I thought was going to happen, and Alabama doesn't play quite as well against Vanderbilt, Alabama was going to be a underdog on the road. Like, when was the last time that happened? No. Almost a three-score favorite when it opened, and now it's down to 2 touchdowns. And again, I would, there's at least one level between Alabama and Arkansas. And yet, because Alabama has struggled in the one real competition that they face this year, don't be surprised if it comes down to, the fourth quarter, because we just haven't seen Alabama perform well against, high competition. And Texas lost to Texas Tech on the road. Yeah. So we'll see.
David, well, I got to ask you before you go. I mean, along the line what Jimmy's talking about, that voodoo at Jordan Hare, it is some weird stuff happening. And I think most everybody thought it was over. But want to flip real quick your thoughts. One more. Ole Miss, Kentucky, Saturday in the Grove in Oxford. That is going to be, I think that's going to be maybe the best game out there this weekend in college football. Yeah, that's it's kind of flying under the radar. I think Jimmy would agree. It's a big one.
And Kentucky sleepwalk a little bit last week because Vanderbilt, was it Northern Illinois? They kind of sleptwalk a little bit last week, and all of a sudden Ole Miss's offense came back against Tulsa. They were not the team that they had been offensively. So I think you're right. I think that is an under the radar ball game. Also, probably one under the radar, and it could be a changing of the guard in the Sun Belt. You got South Alabama heading to Lafayette to take on the Raging Cajuns. The Raging Cajuns lose to Monroe for the first time in Monroe since 2005. And South Alabama is a botched fake field goal away from being 4-0. They took care of Louisiana Tech. The West in the Sun Belt could be wide open. ULM just beat the Cajuns. Troy is a Hail Mary away from being 3-1. They beat Marshall, who beat Notre Dame. And South is going on to take the Cajuns this weekend. So watch out for South. That game started out as a 5-point favorite for South Alabama, and now it's up to 9.5. And I think South Alabama is the better team. Whether they go in there or not and win is a different story. But they are heading into the ball game. South Alabama is the better team. Again, 9.5 on the road in conference is a lot of points.
Yeah, Jimmy, I think you had one question for about 30 seconds.
No, well, again, I just think that Arkansas loss was so devastating. It's really hard for them to come back, and with the loss of Catalan, it's going to be I think too much to overcome. But they're going to be starting out there with their A game. They're going to be really emotional. But I got to say though, despite the opponent, this was Alabama's best game on Saturday. Offensively, they looked focused. They looked sharp. They didn't look distracted. And their receivers really showed up. I look for Bama to really play well because I think that Texas game was a definite wake-up call.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, listen, man, what high school games do you cover? We need to be having a high school segment with you because the talent in Alabama this year is incredible. So who are you covering this week?
We had what did we have last week? We had Spanish Fort and Daphne. It's an out of district game, but they're both on the same side of the water here in Baldwin County. So that was big. We got Saraland taking on Blunt this weekend. We actually got two games. And St. Michael, I think it's St. Michael's is heading to St. Paul. So that's Philip Rivers' school. So I got Saraland. They are one of the top teams in the state. They're all sophomores, by the way. The quarterback is a sophomore. The wide receiver, who's already got a nickname Hollywood, is a sophomore. And the running back is a sophomore. So they're all they're good, and they're one of the top teams in the state. And later on, we'll get Saraland and at Theodore. That could be like for the who's hosting playoffs down the road. So it's going to be a fun weekend, and I love covering the high school football because it's a lot of fun. Except when they play their music, and you can't really hear. Although we were jamming last week, you can't really hear what the studio is telling you to do when the music is up to 15 on the stereo. But it's still a lot of fun.
Well, look, St. Paul's and St. Michael's, I feel a fish fry coming and some bingo. It's going to be big. Hey, look, man, I go to St. Louis. People say, you go to church in St. Louis? I go, no, it's St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis, White Station in Shady Grove. But David Schultz.
Rob, I had to ask this. I had to ask this. Not that it makes a difference to me, but as a nice Jewish boy, I didn't know. So it's St. Paul's with apostrophe S. It's St. Michael. It's not apostrophe S. I don't know if that makes a difference to whatever, but it is St. Michael. Now, you want to call them the St. Michael's team, all right, but it is actually St. Michael. I had to ask.
It's St. Michael, the archangel of battle. That's who it is. But look, let's talk about that next week when you're on. What time's your show on today?
We're at 3 to 6. I got former Alabama quarterback Scott Hunter and former Auburn offensive lineman Tracy Turner between 5 and 6. Also got a special guest, someone from my hometown who's been dealing with head trauma and drug addiction, because I'm unfortunately I'm one of the minority. I am pro targeting rules. I want the kids to be as safe as possible. I know it slows things down, and I know some bad calls are made, but I'm really for trying to keep the game as safe as possible. It's one thing, broken legs and torn shoulders and knees. It's another thing about broken brains. So I got somebody who's been dealing with some issues coming on my show, Ken Bartolo, who's actually the graduate of my high school.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we've had Jim Nagy on the phone at the show a number of times, executive director of the Senior Bowl, and also Kevin Skarbinski. And I was at that coachsafely.org dinner at Vestavia Hills Country Club August 22nd. And I'm sure you're aware of that organization, but hey, we're all about the better coach these players are. Football is a violent collision sport, but it's about safety. I got a brother-in-law with CTE that played at Virginia Tech. Trust me, it's a real deal. But Dave, you are awesome. Love having you on. Go eat some oysters at Felix's today. Have a great one.
Have a great time, Jimmy. Thanks very much. Have a great day, guys.
All right, you too. All right, Yancy Porter joins us now with the Rebel Yell hotline down in Oxford, Mississippi. I guarantee you Yancey's been up since about 5:30 for a 10-mile power walk. He's been to the Beacon for an M16. Folks, that's a meat with 16 sides. And he's probably written a couple of stories. And now he's taking some kids to school. He's in traffic. He's in that rush hour traffic in Oxford, Mississippi. But Yancy, hey, man, big one coming up this weekend. I think it's the most under-the-radar game in America, and that's this Ole Miss Kentucky matchup. And you had our friend Glenn Waldrop on the Rebel Yell hotline last night, and I'm telling you one thing. This is a big one.
It is. Glenn was outstanding, by the way. He's and knowledgeable about any team as I've spoken to in the media in the 25 years of being in the business. Glenn is. There's no better source for Kentucky sports than Glenn Waldrop. I'll say that. But yes, it's a huge matchup. You know, everybody's very, very disappointed. It's 11 a.m. game, from the business owners to the fans to the media. Well, some media are happy about it because then they get to watch football the rest of the day. But you know, the media that aren't selfish are disappointed. But you know, you take that out of the equation of kind of a buzzkill there, starting at 11 a.m. It's just a monster matchup. Two teams that struggled last weekend in their matchups heading up to the big matchup, and that's the classic trap game, right?
Yeah.
I think both teams played poorly. Both teams didn't play with an edge last weekend. As you know, Kentucky returns their All-American running back this weekend, which is going to give them an added dimension.
Yancy, hold those thoughts. We got to take a quick commercial break. The return of Chris Rodriguez. I see where you're going. We're with Yancy Porter, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne. Right back after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas. They're open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department Saturday mornings, 7:30 to 12:30. Austin Futrell in the group back there. 25 service bays, man. Quick, efficient, and honest. They're easy to work with. I love these people. Also, ECS House Industries. We dig the smell of fresh dirt in the morning, Yancy. I love that term. That is a great one. And also, Gateway Tire and Service Centers. We go the distance for our customers and the communities where we do business. May Veterinary Clinic, Northport, Tuscaloosa since 1964. Dogs, cats, animals of all sorts. Dr. May and the group there are fantastic. They'll help you. They also will do referrals if they sometimes send them to Mississippi State Vet School, the Auburn Vet School. They're the finest people you will meet. May Veterinary Clinic. And also, if you're doing any cooking and grilling right now, inside, outside, it is football season, folks. Miss Rubin's Rubs, Black Magic, White Magic, Creole Magic, and the Seafood Magic. MJ made a 15-pound brisket. Took 15 hours. That's an hour a pound. He had to have the wind direction just right, the humidity and everything. He used Black Magic and White Magic on there. That's what I call a GMM, folks, a Green Mile meal. If you're walking the Green Mile to the chair, the guillotine, whatever, that's one meal you'd want to have along with the customary tub of ice cream and anything else. What does it matter at that point? But anyway, Yancy, what does matter is Chris Rodriguez is going to be back for Kentucky. Is he in football shape? We're going to find out Saturday. But I got to say this. You and I were talking a lot the last few days. Lane Kiffin, he's Ole Miss's coach. This guy fits Ole Miss like Sam Pittman fits Arkansas. This is a great fit. Man, your call on Quinshon Judkins, Zach Evans, Ole Miss and Arkansas, both of them can run the ball really well. But Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, talk about adapting. They can do whatever they want. They're imposing their will. Now, Kentucky's a much better team. How's Ole Miss likely going to attack Kentucky? As if you've been in the planning room with the coaches, you know. I'm just getting your thoughts.
Sure. It's easy to see they are taking baby steps with Jackson Dart, with the offensive play calling, the philosophy, the game planning, everything. They are trying to tutor Jackson Dart, baby steps through the process to groom him to where they want him to be. But Jackson's really growing through this season. I expect them to open it up against Kentucky. How open, I don't know. It will be more open than it's been these past few games here that in the season. But they're still going to rely on running that football, right? Zach Evans has got a hip pointer. He's available. He will play. But how effective he's going to be, how many rushes he's going to get, I don't know. They'd like to get about 20 carries apiece, 20, 25 between Zach and Judkins. But as we saw last week, Judkins went with 29 carries. Zach Evans, I believe, only had 8 carries. He went out after the first quarter. It was after that TD run he ran when he got really low and trucked that guy from the 2-yard line and scored there, speaking of Zach Evans. So I don't know, how available Zach really is going to be Saturday. He will play. We'll see how healthy he is, how many carries he gets. But we know one thing, Judkins, if they need for him to run it 40 times, he'll run it 40 times. He's made for these type of games where you get the ball a lot. He's just a bull,
Yeah.
He's a physical specimen for one thing to be 18 years old as a true freshman, but he just has it, right? He has that bulldog mentality. And so luckily they do have someone like Judkins with Zach Evans dinged up, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, you've been right on your call on the Ole Miss's defense, especially on that defensive lineman, the 13, 14 of them they've got that are playing 25, 30 snaps. I mean, that's a lot of snaps. That you're building quality depth. Let's cross over to the offensive line, get a report card on that group up to this point as only YP, the man from Hattiesburg.
Well, I would give them an A- on run blocking, and I'd give them a D+ on pass blocking.
Okay.
So
right.
Overall, that would be just kind of like a C, right?
Yeah.
They struggled on the pass pro set. That's no secret. We talked about it all spring. We talked about it all fall drills. And we talked about it for 3 out of the 4 football games that they played. They've really struggled in the pass pro set. If Kentucky's going to win the game, it's going to be because Ole Miss continues to struggle in that area, and they're going to get after Jackson Dart and maybe force him into some mistakes.
Well, that was a D+ in pass blocking you give the Ole Miss offensive line?
Yeah.
Okay. So that comes out to a C.
Just because they did do well against Georgia Tech in the pass pro set, but the other 3 games they did not. So we'll give them a D+.
Yeah, but that Georgia Tech game was a CBS game, and that's the club and baby seals. I mean, God, they're awful. And of course, yesterday they cleaned house, got rid of the athletic director and the head football coach, and now they're going to have to get them somebody good. And there's boy, you better get it right when you hire an AD, because you want your AD to make the hire as a football coach. But Alan Green made a unilateral hire with Brian Harsin. I'll show y'all. Yeah, he's showing. Thank you. I mean, that's the gift that keeps on giving. Brian Harsin, I don't really like to recruit. It's kind of like the island of misfit toys. I'm a jack in the box that doesn't have a spring. I'm a quarterback who can't throw the corner fade route. Well, I'm an edge rusher who's afraid to rush the quarterback. I mean, good gosh. Holy cow.
Yeah,
you come into the SEC, if you don't like to recruit, that's like being French and not liking to cook.
Well, that's why they got rid of Mullins, too, at Florida, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't much of a recruiter either. He's a hell of a coach.
He is.
Just didn't like to recruit a lot. I don't know, with the Auburn situation. I thought Auburn was being Auburn this past summer and just causing a bunch of controversy.
Yeah.
Unneeded controversy, but until I watched that Missouri game, and wow. I mean, like I told you, while the game was going on, that reminded me of some of the classic Vandy versus Kentucky games, right?
Yeah, a pillow fight.
Back in the day. Now Kentucky is not that anymore.
No.
But, that was the 1980s version of Vandy versus Kentucky. I've I've not seen a worse SEC game than I don't know when. I can't even recall. It has to be over a decade.
Well, it was bad. I don't know if you're a volume. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. But now it's kind of muffled. But one thing for sure, and Jimmy, you watched that pillow fight between Auburn and Missouri. Viewer discretion advised. I know Jim Cantori is going to be down in Tampa this weekend or in the next few days. He won't be at the Auburn LSU game. That's going to be a big one. But back on Ole Miss, I just think there are a lot of people out there in the national media that just can't admit Lane Kiffin's a really good coach. They have that in their head about Nick Saban doesn't like him. How many of y'all know that? I think Nick Saban, I don't know, but I think Lane Kiffin is one of the best quarterback coaches, developing quarterbacks. He exudes confidence, and people want to play for him. And he's got Ole Miss in the limelight every hour of every day. What's not to like about that, Jimmy?
Yeah, Saban's a big Kiffin fan, and you could tell at the end of the Ole Miss Bama game 2 years ago in that shootout in Oxford that Saban has a totally different view of Lane Kiffin than maybe he had before, because you know how the post-game handshake's usually a 5-second, hey, nice game, hope you lose the next 5, you know, that type thing. And
really?
So anyway, he made it a point. He stayed there at midfield and talked to him for maybe a minute, you know, because that was a magnificent offensive game plan that Ole Miss had put together. Alabama's defense was just, you know, almost toothless against that Ole Miss scheme, you know. So, no, he's a big Kiffin fan, no doubt about it. I think a big part of it right now is just, I think Ole Miss's 3 opponents to start the season off just weren't able to compete with them, and it just wasn't the type of opening game or opening season schedule that a lot of national people would pay attention to. And then, you know, last week I really did think that was going to be a good test for Ole Miss because Tulsa can put points up on the board. But I couldn't help but go back because, Yancy, you were there a week and a half ago at Georgia Tech, man. I'm telling you what, you got to be glad that Tech's not in the SEC anymore, because that's about as ugly as it gets. And you talk about the importance of an AD too. I didn't actually know until yesterday that Todd Stansbury, of course, the AD who was also ousted, when he brought Collins in from Temple, he had the university pay Collins's $2.5 million buyout at Temple. And then, because it was going to be a big transition in schemes from Paul Johnson to Collins, they gave him a 7-year contract instead of the traditional 4 at $3 million per. So that was a $24 million mistake right there, with no reduction in the buyout. I mean, he's fully guaranteed. So I mean, you talk about an ugly situation, man, oh man, oh man. So the AD is absolutely critical there. But Yancy, yeah, I think you're right. I think you know, both teams were kind of out of sorts last week, and Kentucky's been doing that, you know, after a big effort like against Florida. They were, you know, not as good as they wanted to be. And leading up to the Florida game in their season opener, they weren't impressive running the football. But it just seems like they have the ability to answer the bell when there's a big game coming up. And I look for both teams to really play like they know how important this game is, because the winner of this game, I think, can see a strong opportunity to, you know, have certainly a 10-win season and maybe better than that, or at least if they can stay injury-free and have their full complement of players having another outstanding season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, in Kentucky's defense, look, I mean, unless you have the talent of Alabama and Georgia, and we even saw Georgia lay an egg against Kent State, right? It's hard when you are playing all of these duds that Ole Miss has played this season.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Kentucky has played a few too. You can't play with an edge. You can't emotionally get into the game. Ole Miss was able to get emotionally into the Georgia Tech game. It was their first road game. Georgia Tech was a Power 5, conference team, even though they might be the worst Power 5 conference team. But, it gave them an edge to play with fire. And then they just couldn't get up again, And look, Tulsa doesn't have the sexy name, but Tulsa, they're a darn good football team, right? They've done this to many teams in the past. So I don't take a lot into Kentucky not blowing out all of these, non-Power 5 teams. I just don't think you can't fool the players. And when you got the SEC looming around the corner and you're asking to get up for Slippery Rock and all of these teams, it just forget about it. It's not going to happen. And if you don't have the talent that Georgia and Alabama do, you're going to struggle in a lot of these games. It's just the way it is.
Well, Yancy and Jimmy last week pointed it out about Tulsa. Don't sleep on Tulsa. Their quarterback ranked number 1, and he was right about that. And I as a Memphis native, I've watched Memphis have some really good teams get their hearts broken many times against Tulsa or Southern Miss going down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I mean, you can't take a day off, and there are very few. And Texas, Alabama against Texas, you can't take a day. There's no days off anymore with the portal because it's hard to keep up with where these guys are going when they leave your school. But what I like about Ole Miss that I'm just is this running game. Quinshon Judkins, Zach Evans. I mean, Henry Parrish, Jerrion Ely, and Snoop Connor, they were really good. But these guys, these guys are, I believe, better running backs. And I think Ole Miss fans, and I'm going to say what I call it like I see it. Jimmy is too, okay? We have to. That's what we owe the listeners on this show. I just think that people are the old slogan, this ain't your father's, Oldsmobile or this is not the Ole Miss where they're happy to win 7 or 8 games. I used to get in arguments with my Ole Miss friends being down there at games, and they'd say, Browne, we're just happy winning, 7 or 8 games. You Auburn and Alabama people, y'all want to win every game. You're ready to, fire the coach and blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, you're right. I mean, but y'all should expect to win every game. And now that $2 billion fundraising campaign, I mean, how that is a significant, I don't know of any SEC schools the last few years that have done that. And we know A&M's got that kind of money. Vanderbilt's private. They've always had it. But Ole Miss winning 10 games last year. This year's floor, I picked them, was 8. Yancy, I'm with you. You get bored playing subpar competition. That's a fact. And I think Ole Miss and Kentucky both are going to come out with their hair on fire, as they say down in the country, Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. That's the timeout game. But that game should be prime time on national TV. That's just not right.
Yeah, I think the SEC owes both schools an apology. I mean, to put them at 11 o'clock slot is criminal. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, look, that thing about 11 o'clock, the Grove, and it's just if you win, we all know one thing: the party afterwards in Oxford, it's going to go on regardless because Jack Daniels will be there. But it's going to be really wild. I mean, we're going to be down in Auburn in our frog togs because we're expecting, that Hurricane Ian to dump some rain on us. But Oxford, it should be just a beautiful day. But I just think what Lane Kiffin, Jimmy's right. I think he's exactly right. That shootout in 2020, 62-55 or whatever it was, that was big. We're going to take a quick break, talk more about it after this on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Rob Browne back with Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, Oxford, Mississippi, native of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Jimmy Hodge up in Lake Zurich. I guess he's getting ready for the snow and the ice. I just, whenever I say Jimmy in Lake Zurich, I just think of, Switzerland, Interlaken, the turquoise blue, whitewater streams. And that's what Jimmy is. Jimmy's an accomplished downhill skier, Yancy. You didn't know that, but he was also in the popular TV series, Welcome Back, Kotter. He sat right next to Horseshack. But Jimmy,
I tell you what, there's nothing I enjoy more than skiing.
Yeah.
That is heaven to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I love it. I love to ski, but Jimmy, jump in back in.
Unless you break your leg.
Yeah. Don't ever say in show business, break a leg in skiing. Like, don't say that.
Yeah. Archie Manning used to say when back in his younger days, he'd take the boys skiing on vacations and so forth. He said, "No way for me. I can't. I don't think I can make it through a run with probably without breaking a bone." So you do have to be kind of careful. I'm sure it's pretty wise to, if you've never done it, to immediately have a few lessons and then start slow. But anyway, Yancy, what did you think overall though about the performance last week against Tulsa? Because the reason I thought that was a game Ole Miss needed is because of Tulsa's offensive scheme and the fact they could put points on the board. And a lot of people don't realize that Davis Brin, the Tulsa quarterback, got injured in the second quarter. So the Tulsa played the bulk of the game with their freshman backup. And but I thought it was a game that Ole Miss needed because they had to, face some obstacles and be in a competitive game, I felt, and be able to encounter some various situations you're going to face that are unpredictable in a close game. And so I thought from that standpoint, that was a really good game for them to have.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, that, Tulsa had the ball, I believe, 4 times in the fourth quarter to potentially tie the game, right? Tulsa got out to a 14-7 lead. Then Ole Miss ran off 28 straight points, made it 35-14, and then just put it on cruise control, right? They just didn't play with an edge. Anybody who was nicked up, they could add a picky nail, that was a little off center or something, and they didn't play in that game. They had a lot of key players not playing in that game to make sure they were 100% ready for the Kentucky game. And I just didn't think they tackled well. I thought it was probably the poorest offensive and defensive schemes, game plans I've seen yet in the Lane Kiffin era. I thought the pass blocking was very, very poor. Went back to a lot of bad habits they had before that we thought maybe they were making progress against Georgia Tech. Nobody stepped up at wide receiver outside of Mingo. I didn't really find many positives out of that game, to be honest, Jimmy, outside of the fact that Tulsa did have the ball 4 times in a row in the fourth quarter to come down and tie the game, and the Ole Miss defense shut them down. So that was that was nice. And Judkins was nice, as he always is. But outside of that, it was kind of like a horror movie. Just kind of flush it and don't watch it again.
But Yancy, that's a game where the coaching staff can have a field day in being able to get this team ready, because
no question about it. They drank while you're going there, Jimmy. I think Ole Miss drank the rat poison, as Saban and now Lane likes to say, and I think they thought that their poop didn't smell and they could just show up and beat anybody, and they learned very quickly that that's not the truth, right? They're not that talented. They're not Alabama, Georgia talented. You're going to have to come to play even against teams like Tulsa. Let me tell you something. If that quarterback did get hurt for Tulsa, I don't know what happens in that game. I'm going to be honest. I mean, Tulsa, they could have, that could have gone down like the Jacksonville State loss for Houston Nutt, back in 2000. Believe that was
2009.
11.
11.
2010,
Yeah.
11
yeah.
season. I mean, it could have gone down historically bad, because that Tulsa quarterback was ripping that Ole Miss defense, shredding them up. But again, Ole Miss had many key players out. Anybody that was nicked up at the least didn't play in that game, including perhaps their two best defenders there, J.J. Pease and Kyrie Coleman, that, really hurt them defensively. So, when you don't play with an edge, Jimmy, you don't tackle well, right? And they just didn't tackle well. They had a lot of busted coverages. I think the Tulsa coaching staff outcoached the Ole Miss staff. I think there was a lot of negatives, but what it does, it allows everybody to refocus, right? Now they can come into practice this week and say, hey, you thought you were all that, and you saw you're not. And, hey, as a staff, we got to get better too. So I think it's really going to work out in Ole Miss's favor by laying an egg last weekend. And Kentucky might be saying the same thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Got a text in here, interesting text here from Billy Givens in Yazoo City, Mississippi. This ain't Billy Brewer's Ole Miss Rebels. We ain't going to have a great game and then the next week fall off the map. Well, I will say this. If you could have that defense that the dog, native of Columbus, Mississippi, rest his soul, I love that guy, had in 92 with, Dwayne Dotson, Cassius Ware, Norman Hand, Tim Bowens. I got a buddy of mine that played for Ole Miss, and he was telling me when Tim Bowens came, he said, man, how'd they work that out? He goes, he parachuted into Auburn like an hour before kickoff. He was like Jefferson on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Hey, I didn't know he went to school here. I thought he just flew in on Fridays. But
I saw Bowens did go to school.
I know he did. He was a scholar.
Together. He sat right next to me the very first day of class, but I can tell you this, he never showed up for class again the rest of the semester.
hey, the Ole Miss people are still steaming about how Eddie Blake got into school at Auburn.
He was a scholar, Jimmy, a scholar.
From Ole Miss.
He was a magna cum laude scholar.
Dante Jones at Mississippi State that passed like 39 hours.
Dante Jones, 36 hours.
To get him to the Final Four. Yeah.
30, hey, guys.
39 hours.
36 hours in summer schools. Yeah, sure. This kind of stuff happens to me every day.
Yeah. In fact, he was a candidate for the first ever mail-in Rhodes Scholarship.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you right now, this game, though, speaking of that, really what the difference is, and Jimmy's pointed it out about, look, coaches like Nick Saban is older than Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is younger than his dad, Monty, but he's learned from these guys. And I listened to Lane Kiffin with David Kellum, who I'd love to have as a guest on Sidelines, Yancy, if you can ever make that happen, the voice of the Rebels.
We're going to make that happen. We're going to make that happen.
Tell you what,
I promise you.
Okay, thank you. Because I tell you what, my wife and I, we had to run up to the borough. That's what we call Jonesboro over here in Arkansas. We're back between there and Memphis all the time. We were on the way back from the borough for the College World Series. And I rather than watch it on TV, I wanted to listen to the last few minutes of the College World Series championship when Ole Miss won this, back in late June. And to hear David Kellum, he was so emotional. You know, if you've ever worn the cardinal red and powder blue of the Ole Miss Rebels, this is for you. And he was broken up. He genuinely, absolutely, unequivocally loves Ole Miss. And I thought that More Than a Voice was fantastic on the SEC network, but they didn't include Stan Torgensen. Stan Torgensen, I really loved the big guy. I mean, he
What a
looked like,
great voice.
yeah, George Wendt from Cheers, you know, or Otis Campbell. He kind of looked like Otis from the Andy Griffith Show, but he was an incredible play-by-play guy. Incredible.
Yeah.
And David Kellum.
He was my favorite. Yeah. And his son Larry was a good player at Ole Miss.
Yeah. And so I wish that, you know, that More Than a Voice needs to be a series, because they didn't even touch Paul Eels of Arkansas, who died tragically in 2006. Some of the great announcers, you know, Jim Hawthorne was outstanding at LSU. We know about the golden pipes of John Ferguson, but that's the thing that we love about it. But Yancy and Jimmy, this Ole Miss Kentucky game, 11 o'clock, it is, you know, 11 o'clock, nothing you can do about it. The one thing, and I love to bet these games, it always favors the visiting team. If they can jump on top 14-0, the crowd, you know, people hadn't had enough to eat, hadn't had enough to drink to where they feel right yet. And they're kind of, they're caught in between. It's kind of a no man's zone. And you got to show up ready to play a full 60, don't you?
Yeah, this league, yeah.
I mean, there's just no easy way out.
Jimmy, I think the key to the game for Ole Miss really is how much consistent pressure can they get on that outstanding quarterback, and how much consistent pressure can Kentucky get on Dart. You know, Dart is still 6 games into his career. I mean, you got to remember now, he's only 19 years old. This is his 5th start in his career. They're taking baby steps with him. And I think it's fascinating watching how Lane is nurturing Dart, right? I mean, if you really watch the Ole Miss games, you can kind of just see how he's progressing Dart through his career here and getting him to where he wants him to be. But, you know, it's all about getting after the quarterback on both sides to me. And then also for Kentucky is Rodriguez. They haven't had that physical running game that they've had, you know, under Rich Rod, and bringing back their All-American running back, you know, does he bring that element back to their offense? Those, to me, are the keys to the game.
Well, Yancy, I think it's really overlooked, the matchup between the Ole Miss defensive front and the Kentucky offensive line in the trenches. In Kentucky's effort to try to establish a running game, because I think Smoke has done a nice job, you know, in Rodriguez's absence. And now, you know, you got 2 guys that can kind of offer a change of pace type of look for to a defense. And if Kentucky can get enough of a running game established to allow Levis to be able to throw when he wants to, and not when the Ole Miss defense establishes a standard in which Kentucky is forced to throw on downs and distances they don't want to have, that's going to be a big key. But also, I think you need to look for the fact that Kentucky's young receiver core is really starting to develop. So I'm interested to see how they can step up in this game. But it really is a fascinating matchup, because these are 2 really sneaky good teams with high ceilings.
Yeah, Yancy, look, we
maybe the 2 most underrated coaches in America. I mean, I know everybody loves Lane and the tweets and all that kind of stuff, but, you know, I mean, you look at it, I mean, it was rumored that Lane didn't get some jobs that maybe he was interested in the last couple of years. How that is, so I don't know. I don't know what an AD would be thinking now. It's probably too late. I think he's really settled into Oxford, but, you know, and then you look at Kentucky's coach over there, what he's done over there is just unbelievable, but you don't hear a lot about him in the national media. So it could be the classic matchup of the two most underrated coaches in America, in my opinion.
It's the most underrated game out there this weekend. Look, Yancy, we've kept you long, and I really I appreciate you being on here with us, man, because this is great stuff. And we'll talk to you again we can get you back on later in the week, because especially Saturday, we're going to want you to call in if you can for our rapid fire Saturday roundtable. But it's just big. And I'll tell you, man, I look at Ole Miss, like Jimmy's pointed out, these kinds of games. This is a breakout game. One of these teams, I think, is going to have just explode on the national scene. Tell them how they can follow you on the Rebel Yell hotline.
Yep, just listen anytime, 6 to 7 on Mondays on the Rebel Yell hotline, or you can listen to it on podcast. We always have a replay of the show. And thank you for the chance to come back on the show, and I look forward to talking to y'all, both of you, later this week. God bless, and y'all have a blessed day.
Yeah, real quick. One more thing. What's the podcast address?
It is just at Rebel Yell hotline.
Okay.
Very simple.
All right, we got it. Even Carl Childers can figure that out, and my dad. Okay. All right, Yancy, thanks. Have a blessed day yourself.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Jimmy, I tell you, last week, man, you were one of the lone voices in the wilderness talking about that upcoming Tulsa at Ole Miss matchup. And, it's a small private Presbyterian university with maybe 4,000 students. And year after year, one thing they don't lack is money, because we all know, where did Mr. Brewster live? The man who managed all the Clampett's millions they made in the oil business. Mr. Brewster, as Cousin Pearl would say, lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, that's where Uncle Jed said. But Jimmy, you've been to that campus. I've been to Tulsa on the Arkansas River. They got something. They always have. They're competitive in everything, aren't they?
Yeah, I've been to Tulsa many times during my Adidas days. I dealt with a lot of large high schools there in the Tulsa area, and also I don't know if Bartlesville maybe has more oil wealth than Tulsa, but it's a very oil-rich part of the country for sure.
But 66.
But yeah, Tulsa is the smallest Division I or FBS school that plays football, and it's amazing how they're able just to continue to be competitive. People don't realize they took Ohio State down to the very end last year in Columbus.
Yeah.
So they're just always a threat, and they beat Notre Dame in South Bend a number of years ago. So again, with that scheme, and Scotty Montgomery's been the head coach there for a number of years. They've really established a reputation with their offense, which makes it a very attractive place to go if you can throw it and you can catch it. So again, they're just always a team that when you see them on the schedule, it's not smart to automatically mark a W next to that game.
Yeah.
You're going to have to play maybe 4 hours, because there's going to be some footballs thrown in the air.
Yeah, it always is. Hey, we're going to get ready to take a break here in just a few seconds. We're going to be joined coming out of the break with legendary voice of he started out Texas Lutheran. He was radio. He was in the seminary. And then he did CBS college football for a long time. Still does Masters golf. VERN LUNDQUIST with us right after this break on Sidelines.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, Call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you on Sidelines on this Tuesday, going into week 5 of the college football season. Going to be a lot of fun. I tell you what, we are having a lot of fun talking about this Ole Miss Kentucky game. You know, find me a game in the SEC, conference game, non-conference game. It really doesn't matter. They're all huge. And of course, we've all grown up watching these games on TV, listening on the radio. And I referenced More Than a Voice. I thought that was a great documentary done on SEC Network, talking about all the great announcers. But and look, Bob Fulton was a longtime voice of the South Carolina Gamecocks. We all know Larry Munson. Mick Hubert down at Florida, just retired before this season started. That was kind of unusual, to say the least, but he just felt like it was time to go. John Ward, there's so many, Kaywood Lefford at Kentucky, there's so many great ones. But watching the games, and we're waiting for VERN LUNDQUIST to join us here from Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and I think they're on Mountain Standard Time out there. But Jimmy, while before we go to VERN LUNDQUIST, I want to say that looking at Saturday's slate of games, it's another really strong weekend. But a game, again, that's quietly under the radar. Another one is Texas A&M and Mississippi State. You've got Mississippi State with a chance to really get a big win at home. A&M going on the road. A&M, they have not been dominant in any game this year. They were fortunate to get the win against, well, that was a neutral site, not quite neutral, at Jerry's World in the Southwest Classic Saturday. But what are your thoughts on A&M and Mississippi State?
I think if A&M's not ready to play from the opening kickoff, a State could run them out of the stadium. I mean, I really like their offense, and Leach historically takes 2 or 3 years to get the air raid system put in and have everything functioning. And Rogers, in his 3rd year as a starter, is really playing at a high level. And when you throw the ball as much as they do, it's only natural that those receivers, whether they're new to the program, transfer portal guys, or just young guys that have been trying to learn that system over a couple of years, they just get better with game reps. There's no substitute for that. And I think just overall, defensively with Zach Arnett, they're just a different team from just an overall standpoint. And man, I really like this Mississippi State team.
Yeah, you've been high on them. And again, what's not really talked about enough is the job that Zach Arnett does with that Mississippi State defense. But State this year, this is year 3 under Mike Leach. The way they ended last season left a terrible taste in people's mouths about, wow, especially the way in the Liberty Bowl. It was such a good storyline, Mike Leach against his old employer, Texas Tech, but it's been a while since he coached there, and I'm not sure how many of the people that were there had anything to do with him leaving and all. That's just something people write about. But I think this is kind of a watershed moment for Jimbo Fisher. I mean, they're fortunate that they got the win over Arkansas, but I could see Mississippi State just absolutely exploding for a lot of points Saturday. And listen, again, if you haven't been to Starkville, okay, that's one of the toughest places that you're going to play, in America. The cowbells, everything. It's just a brutal environment. And you can ring them up until the center snaps the ball. So and I think about college environments. Hey, VERN LUNDQUIST is on with us right now, and I got to tell you, I can't remember a guest that's been more eagerly anticipated the excitement. And I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to join us. I told my two boys and my dad, who's 94, you were coming on. They're all listening. My son said, man, we grew up with Grand Bob and you on Saturdays. If we weren't in Auburn, we were listening to Vern and Gary. So we've shared so many moments watching the games with you over the years, but it's a hell of an honor to have you on our show, and welcome to Sidelines.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I was looking back at your resume, and my friend Dave Cody, who you know out in Texas, I met him about 40 years ago when he was up here in Memphis. Your career, it wasn't, hey, right out of school, you're the voice of CBS college football games. And it's an incredible career, because I remember as a kid when you were the voice of the Dallas Cowboys with Brad Sham and all. Let's kind of go back. I think people need to appreciate your remarkable journey, and continues to go on as you still do Masters. And our friend Lauren Smith absolutely loves having lunch with you over at the Masters.
Well, I started in Austin more years than you've been alive. I started in Austin in 1963 and was there for 3 years. And really the big break I got, two big breaks, came on my third audition. I finally landed a job at WFAA in Dallas. It was the 8th largest market in the country then. I think it's number 5 now, Dallas, Fort Worth. And we were an ABC affiliate. Around the country, ABC didn't do much, but we had a dominant newscast, really dominant. We doubled the audience of both the CBS and NBC affiliates at our 6 and 10. And because of that, I think I got a call from Tex Schramm, the general manager of the Cowboys, and he said, we want to try you on our radio network. I started as a pre and post game guy. I did that for a couple of years. Then I moved Blackie Sherrod, who was a brilliant sports columnist with the color guy, and he decided he'd had enough of flying.
Yeah.
And so I was elevated to the pre and post, to the color analyst position. Worked alongside a man named Bill Mercer, who's 96 and still living. And then Bill decided to go into baseball. He took the Major League Baseball job when the Rangers came to town from Washington, D.C. That left open the play-by-play job. And Tex called and said, we're going to promote you. And that, because the Cowboys were, evolving into America's team, we had at that point, I'm just probably bigger now, we had 119 stations in 19 states.
Wow.
And Tex told me, he said, what are your aspirations? And I said, someday I want to be a network play-by-play guy. And he said, well, here's the deal. We're going to be pretty good. And if you can do the job, and I obviously think you can, the networks will find you. You don't need to go audition anymore. And after 2 years, that is exactly what happened. I got a call from ABC, and I started doing college football, and then that evolved into some golf and boxing and all kinds of stuff. And then in '82, I got the dreaded phone call that I think some of us, almost all of us at some point in the craft that we practice, Robbie, they said, we're going to move in a different direction.
Yeah.
And there I was 42. And I was miserable. Suddenly I didn't know what the future held. And CBS came along, and I signed with them on a very limited basis. because I was still doing the Cowboys and still anchoring the news in Dallas. And I started doing college football, and then that evolved into golf and basketball and the rest of it. And I've been at CBS now since '82, so we're coming up on 40 years, and well, we're at 40 years.
Yeah,
and that's a rough approximation of what my background in broadcasting is. Along the way, as we all, it's a roller coaster, and you've got to deal with the lows as well as the highs, and somehow maintain equilibrium. And then, I'm now 82 years old. It seems impossible, but it's true. I can look in the mirror and know that it's true.
Yeah.
And then I retired from college football in 2016. I retired from basketball in 2017, and then my management, CBS Sports, said, "You've got to get off. We want you to stay on and do the Masters." So that is my deal. And the agreement I have with CBS is that I'll do 2023 and 2024. And that will equal, because I missed 2 years back in the 90s when I took the money and went to Turner Sports. We lost the NFL to Fox. And anyway, that's a long story. So in 2024, that marks my 40th appearance at Augusta. And so I think that we've agreed. I mean, management and me and I have agreed that we'll round it out with Augusta that year.
Well, it's incredible, and again, watching you broadcast a game and call a game, and I like what you said. The research that you do to prepare for every game, and you said, I watched that documentary on CBS, In Your Life, and you said it may not be used, but in my limited little role getting to work, when I was in college for ESPN or CBS or whatever, if people had an idea of what goes on in the background, I think their head would keep spinning for years just for that one broadcast. And you prepare for a broadcast. I've watched you for a long time, like a trial lawyer going before the Supreme Court of the United States. And it's impressive and it shows. And you know what else? When something big happens, you just say an answered prayer or whatever. Less is more, as my dad says. It's remarkable. Talk about that approach.
Well, I do think that's years of experience. I've used this analogy. I get a lot of comments about the Tigers chip shot in 2005. And I really believe I would have called it differently had I been 35 years of age. It was years of experience and years of reacting to extraordinary things in athletics that teach you discipline. And I just think on that one occasion, well, Jack Nicklaus in '86, same thing. Just be brief. You're a headline writer. You're not an essayist. Just shut up and let the cameras and the audio guys and video guys, let them help capture, and you put a headline on it. And so brevity, and I promise you, I sit at home now on Saturday afternoon because I'm still a big college football freak. And I sit at home and listen to guys, and I'm screaming at the television set, shut up, just lay out. Because so many people don't. They think they can enhance the viewer's appreciation if they just do run-on sentences. And the key is to let it breathe, in my view. Others may disagree. But it's worked for me, and it's worked very well. And I think simple sentences, good use of adjectives helps, but I do think the simpler the better. And that has served me well. It really has.
Yeah, and it watching when you do a broadcast, and we were all, it was a Sunday afternoon, April 1986. We were all over at the Sigma Newhouse at Auburn watching the Masters when Jack Nicklaus at 46 hit the putt. And we still remember what you said. It was just 2 words, 1 word. In the South, it could be 1 word, but and I was at the Kick 6 game, and I remember that one. I still, it's surreal, but there've been so many moments. What do you tell the fans when you go out and you speak around the country? I mean, whenever CBS does a game, it is like a major theatrical, production with Cecil B. DeMille and the great directors and writers. And I'm worried when CBS doesn't do the SEC games anymore. It's like when we were kids growing up, Jimmy and I and all of us going to the movie theater on Saturday. It was a big deal, and people dressed nicely and all. We need to keep that special, unique part of college football. And I hope you've got people that you've mentored that are going to keep doing that.
Well, what you speak to right there is alive and well in the South, and it's one of the reasons that when I was assigned to the SEC, I really didn't want to do it because life was pretty good for me. I was number 2 announcer in the NFL. I worked my last year with Dan Deerdorf. And we, if you're number 2, you get good games in great cities. And I was very comfortable. And then they called and said, we're going to assign you to the SEC. And I resisted because, and in part it was travel. I mean, we live in a ski resort 3.5 hours west of Denver. And trust me, there are no nonstop flights from Steamboat Springs to Tuscaloosa. And the travel alone was wearing me down, or did wear me down. But having said that, I vividly remember my very first game in the SEC. It was at Florida at Tennessee. In all the years I'd never been to Neyland Stadium. And Jesse Palmer scored or did not score on a touchdown pass to a guy named Jabbar Gaffney. And Florida came from behind and won by 1. And I was working with Todd Blackledge. And when the game was over, I was breathless, the excitement of it. And we went to commercial. I looked at Todd and I said, "Are they all like this?" And he said, "Enough of them." And boy, was he right. And it's obviously some people take their allegiance a little too seriously, but it is that allegiance and what it means in the South. I mean, I love the current slogan that the SEC comes up with. It just means more.
Yeah.
And in that part of the country, I think it does.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the fabric of life in the South.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does go overboard, but yet to immerse yourself in that every Saturday, as I did for 17 years in the fall, is one of the joys of my life.
Incredible. Can we hold
Matter
the
of
thought?
fact,
Can we hold the thought real
go
quick?
ahead.
We'll take a quick break. We're going to come back with more with VERN LUNDQUIST on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back here on this Tuesday going into week 5 Sidelines with Jimmy Hodge. And We got VERN LUNDQUIST, long time and still CBS broadcasting. He's a legend, and he's someone that we've grown up with. That delivering the games. They never get old. Too much is never enough. All those they apply here. But VERN LUNDQUIST, you were making some great points about football and broadcasting games, and your first introduction is at Neyland Stadium, and my wife is a Vol for life. I've been up there many times, had my heart broken as an Auburn alum a few times as well, but
well,
it's incredible.
Rob, each of the SEC, then obviously over the years, there's contractually every SEC member is given at least one game over. I think it's a 5-year period. So I've done games in Vanderbilt, for example, and they're not exactly, they're an intellectual powerhouse, but not an athletic one. But we've been to Vanderbilt, Starkville, all through the South. And I've done tons of Auburn games in Auburn.
Yes.
And love that city. It's a beautiful little village on the plains.
Yeah.
And so I mean, being a part of the SEC is one of the treasures of my life. And I think about those days every Saturday. We're loyal to Gary and Brad Danielson.
Yeah.
Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler.
Yes.
And so we tune in whatever our game is. My wife is a Texas Longhorn.
Okay.
And so we last weekend we were torn between Texas and Texas Tech and the LSU Florida game. But with the speed dial, we expose ourselves to it all. She knows. I mean, I'm up sitting in front of the television set at 9:30 on Saturday morning, our time, and I don't wander very far away until 10 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah,
because I love the sport. I love the tradition. I love I pretend for 3.5 hours every Saturday afternoon that every one of those guys goes to class. Yeah, so
I love it. Jimmy,
it's
jump
an
in here.
illusion.
Yeah, no, I love that part of it. I like to hope so too. Jimmy Hodge, I know you've got a quick question for VERN LUNDQUIST, and Doug Dean's on the line with us, AU Dose in Birmingham. But Jimmy, go ahead, and this is absolutely great to have you on here.
Yeah, Vern, I remember that Florida-Tennessee game you were talking about, because had that pass been caught at midfield, that's an incomplete pass. That's the only place on the field that they could have ruled it really a catch and a touchdown. And ironically, back in those days, you still had officiating crews that had former players, working certain games. And it turned out Al Matthews was the guy that made that call, and he's a former Vandy player. And, and they asked Al Ford, who was the referee. Al went to the end zone and talked to Al, and they asked Al, what did you ask him? He said, "Are you sure of that call?" And, two Al's here, and they were involved in that conversation. And Al Ford said he told me, yeah. And he said, I wasn't about to change it, And it was just mayhem, And, and from that point on, I think they really finally, 20 years late, moved away from having maybe players that might have a conflict there, from working games. But what I wanted to ask you though, Vern, is was it that very first CBS SEC game you had that hooked you, or was it maybe a couple years down the road where when you guys have that prime 3:30 Eastern game, most of the games are just unbelievable. The quality of play is great. And when did it really hit you that, man, I've just stepped into a gold mine here?
I think probably my first Iron Bowl. And that was that year. Ironically, they were still playing. That was the first time Auburn had gone to Alabama. They took it away from Legion Field in Birmingham. I think that was it.
Yes.
And I remember the first game. It was raining and cold, and Auburn won at Tuscaloosa by a 9-0 score.
Yeah.
But then the next year, when I began to realize the importance of this sport to the people in this region, I fell in love with it. Now, as I just alluded to, sometimes there's an overemphasis on it. And I think particularly in the case of people who love the Crimson Tide or War Eagle, boy, oh boy, I say this, I've done this on radio talk shows before. I grew up in Austin, Texas, so I was familiar with Texas, Oklahoma. I've done Ohio State, Michigan. I've done USC, UCLA, and I realized that the severity or the allegiance of those two the two schools in each case bring out in their followers. But I have never, ever, to this day, seen anything like the passion and the hatred between Auburn and Alabama folks. And it's a fine, not a wonderful thing, but it's so intense. And sometimes people go overboard. Obviously, the guy that burned the trees and
oh yeah.
I mean, he was a nutcase, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, certifiable. But and I'm a big fan. I know Paul. I did. A disciple of Jesus when you listen to Paul, and he's so knowledgeable. And as I got to know him, he educated me on part of the history of the SEC.
Yeah.
And I mean, over the course of those years I did that, one of my best friends, and I know this was crossing a line, but I just was Mike Slide. We were the same age. We lost Mike to prostate cancer a few years ago.
Yeah.
And who do you pull for? Well, I pull for people I care about.
Yeah.
And I want them to do well. It's not an on-the-air rah-rah thing. I just as an example, Dan Reeves, who passed away a few years ago. Yeah. Dan was with the Cowboys as a halfback when I played there. And so we became friends. And wherever he was, I always pulled for Dan Reeves, whether it was Denver, the Giants, or the Falcons.
Yeah.
And that's where my allegiance lies. It's not to a school or a team; it's to the people.
I love.
I don't know how I got down that tangent, but anyway.
I agree with you. And Doug Dean down in Birmingham, jump on, and VERN LUNDQUIST. I got to tell you, you're right about the good people. I mean, I think about Buddy Davidson, David Housel, Reba Gulledge at Auburn, Claude Felton at Georgia, the great sports information directors over the years, Haywood Harris. These people are the traffic cops of those universities directing people. But when the TV people come to campus, like I said, CBS, when they come to town, short of the Stones, Zeppelin, or Elvis, it's about as good as it gets for college football. Doug?
Vern, Doug Dean, I'm an Auburn man, but I'm close second a SEC football fan. And I just, on behalf of all the fans, especially here in the South, I wanted to get this off my bucket list, getting to speak directly to the great VERN LUNDQUIST. And thank you for giving such a big voice and such excitement and calls, both you and Gary, over so many years. And pardon the partisanship here, since you refer to the Iron Bowl rivalry, it's pretty doggone intense. We all three of us can agree on that. But the question I have is, one game stands out of all the great Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Georgia fans that love calls you've made in huge games. One game stands out in terms of immortality that required only 1 second, if you know what I mean, Vern.
Of course I do.
And so my question on that, I was sitting in the south end zone in Jordan-Hare on my birthday, November 30th, not bad for an Auburn man. And inside that play, when it was, Auburn got it, or Alabama, I think, got a timeout, Auburn did, to try to ice the kicker. And you saw Auburn insert Chris Davis. As it's leading up to that monumental, epic play, or arguably the greatest finish in the history of college football, if not all sports. You can debate that. Was it as disorienting to a professional, a consummate professional like you, as it was to many of us sitting in the stadium and watching what was actually going on? Because the late Rod Bramblett, I guess his spotter told him that it was returnable. Was everything that was going on a little bit disorienting for a pro like you, Vern?
No, not really. I mean, I saw the substitution being made during the timeout. I saw Chris Davis go back in the end zone. I can't remember whose place he took. I can't remember that. You might.
I think Ryan Smith.
Yeah.
But Gary and I were aware that it was returnable, and I loved Gary's description. We after he scored, and I shared this with you because I think all of us are college football fans, have seen that play hundreds of times. It gets replayed all the time. That particular play, and when Chris Davis crossed the 50, I mean, unless he stumbled and fell, he was going to score. And when he got to when he got in the end zone, I said, no flags, touchdown Auburn, and answered prayer, right?
Answered prayer.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself for just that long, I looked back up the field and I thought, dear God, don't let there be any flags. And fortunately, there weren't.
Yeah.
And Gary's replay was just priceless because we waited 2 minutes, I think, as Steve Milton, our director, who still does all the SEC games. Steve and Craig Silver were our team. Craig's the producer. And Steve cut 21 camera shots, I think, in a minute and a half that Gary and I just shut up. And he just brilliantly, he was like he was orchestrating a movie scene.
Wow.
Wide shots, close-ups, long shots, end zone. Anyway, when we did the replay, on the last replay, and Gary had said, I don't know if you remember this, he had said, now this could be blocked, watch out. And that's what he was expecting. Well, he noticed that Alabama had their punt protection team on the field. So on the third replay, we're watching Chris Davis, and he skipped down the sideline. And on Gary's third replay, he said, well, no wonder Alabama couldn't stop him. They don't have athletes out there. They got nothing but fat guys.
I remember that.
Oh, you and Gary, did you enjoy working with Gary as much as it seemed on air to us?
Yes. Now, we are polar opposites. I'll share a quick anecdote with you about Gary, and I worry about him right now because he lives in Bonita Springs.
Yeah.
And I'm just betting that he was told to get out of there, and their game this weekend is in Arkansas. And I'm wondering if Gary didn't at least get to it to get away from that Gulf Coast area because of the hurricane. Anyway, we were doing a game at Alabama, and it was a two-tiered video broadcast booth. So first level, second level, and Gary's over in the corner. He studies as assiduously as any man I know. God, is he well prepared, and he's very concentrated on his pregame preparation. But he agreed to do a profile. The Birmingham News had a guy who was following him. So in the meantime, my notes are done. The last hour, I've got my spotting board ready and my legal pad with my notes on it. I'm set to go. And so I was standing up on the second level, and ADs were coming by. I think David Housel came by, and a variety of SEC guys. And Gary was quoted in the paper as saying to the newspaper guy, he said, look at him. I'm down here trying to concentrate on my notes, and he's up there glad-handing with everybody who walks in. And he meant it affectionately. And he said, I would no sooner do that than I would put an ice pick in my eye. When that quote got in the paper, when I retired in 2016 at the SEC championship game, Gary gave me an ice pick. I'm looking at it right now, and it's a real ice pick, and it says Vernon Gary 2006 to 2016.
That's beautiful.
And I treasured this thing.
Yeah.
Well,
It came from the heart, you know.
For sure.
And we
Vern,
talked
I just want to
periodically.
thank you. You're the GOAT. You're the GOAT as far as I'm concerned, and there's a lot of great ones, including Brad Nessler. But we thank you so much for all the many great calls.
Thank you very much.
Vern Lundquist, I tell you what, I wish we had more time. We're about out of time, but I got to tell you, just you think about the relationship that people have with their schools, and you're right. And when you all are doing a game, just the professionalism, the preparation that goes into it, it's just priceless. And you know, like I said, my parents are 87 and 94, and they watch every Auburn game. My mom has to watch them alone. She can't even be around people. She's so into it. So I want to say thank you, and we'd love to have you on again. But there's something about Austin, Texas, and the number of people that have come out of there. And I told you that Dallas, the Texas and OU coming into the SEC, maybe just one game you could call a Texas game when they come into the SEC, I think would be incredible. But I know this much: our good friend Lauren Smith absolutely just has the highest respect, love, and admiration for you, and we all do. But I think you just nailed it. You came into our living rooms for all these years. You pulled families together. Elvis talked about he loved getting together because getting together meant eating. Well, getting together, watching college football with Vern and Gary all these years made families closer. And all of us are better for it watching these games, but we genuinely appreciate it and respect it. And what did you say when Jack Nicklaus hit that putt in 1986? Just can you say it one more time for us before we go?
I can say it, but I can't. Emotionally, I'm incapable of supplying the same emphasis because, it was very simple. Here again, when Jack was approaching the putt, I thought to myself, just mentally, I just said, if he makes this, he's got the lead, and it was improbable. So I said, keep it simple and get out of the way. And I cheated a little bit because I waited to say maybe until it was no more than a foot from the hole. Yeah. If I'd said that when it was 3 feet away, it maybe might have had more meaning. But anyway, I said maybe, and then I yelled, as I said, with distinctly more emphasis than I can put up today. But yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I'm not an autograph collector.
Yeah.
But I called Jack and I said, I've got this 20 by 30 photograph. Would you sign it? Yeah. And it's on my office wall. And he signed it. It's the familiar pose at 17 with his arm raised and the putter in his hand. And he's staring at the wall. And he signed it to Vern, yes, sir, with emphasis, your friend Jack Nicklaus.
Wow.
And I treasure that. I treasure it greatly.
Oh.
So I also cheated, and I got one from Tiger too. So.
Well, I want to say this, Vern Lundquist, thank you so much for taking time out of your Tuesday. This has been, it's as good as it gets, and we want to have you on again, but thank you for what you do for broadcasting. You make us all glued to the television, but the hard work, it's worth it. And keep doing this. I look forward to your 90th birthday and having you back on here again. Have a great day, sir.
Okay, Rob. Thank you so much.
Okay. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. More Sidelines on Wednesday. Have a great day, everybody. We're out of here.